Hi, everyone. Hope you're doing well. I have a special guest with me, Caitlin Long, who is no stranger to the show, is a Wall Street veteran, 22 years, in fact, and a member of the Wyoming Blockchain Task Force. Caitlin, thank you for joining us.
Hey, it's great to be back. Thank you.
Caitlin, you wrote a really great article about the Facebook Libra global coin, as they are calling it,
or Zuck coin, as some people are calling it.
Zuck bucks.
Zuck bucks, yeah.
So amazing things happening on their end, and everyone is curious about, what is it going to do? What's going to happen? And you had some very interesting predictions, and we're going to go through some of that today. But what was your initial reaction when you heard Facebook was going to launch a cryptocurrency?
Well, it wasn't a shocker, given what's happened with WeChat in China. That the path has already been laid for messenger companies to integrate a cryptocurrency. Telegram, of course, did an ICO, so Facebook is late to the party, if you will,
Sure.
from that perspective. So I'm not shocked at all. But what's different is that Facebook obviously is going to be bringing a different level of scale to this program than many of the others.
Got it. And one of the things that you mentioned in your predictions is that looks like it could potentially do well in developing countries and bringing maybe a solution to the unbanked.
Well, it's that, but it's also more subtle, which is that I think this is actually going to impose discipline on developing country central banks. The group of people who probably hate Facebook Libra the most are central bankers in countries like Venezuela and Zimbabwe, because this is all of a sudden going to be a alternative. And I was talking to somebody earlier wondering whether that increases the probability that Facebook is blocked in those countries, right? China has the Great Firewall of China. Facebook is not a site that that you can visit when you're in China. And other countries may try to do the same thing if Facebook Libra turns out to be such a great alternative to their domestic currencies. But on the flip side, the central bankers now they recognize that there's a denationalized money, essentially a private central bank out there, which is this Facebook Libra Foundation that's truly global. In a way, it's Hayek's denationalized money, with the big exception that it effectively is a new form of central banking. We can talk about that in a moment. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And they have these big partners as well who will be running nodes or be validators like AT&T and many others.
Vodafone and Uber and eBay and PayPal, I think I saw. Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of banks are going to be in there as well.
For sure. And one of the things you mentioned is that along the lines of what you're talking about, that it'll be more of a threat to the central banks, but actually good for Bitcoin and the crypto market, right?
Yes. I think this is going to educate a lot of people about what cryptocurrency is. It's going to put a really powerful idea in a lot of people's heads, which is that money doesn't need to be government sponsored, that you can actually have private money. What a radical concept. And so that is a wonderful thing. But as more people dig into what's really going on and learn how the cryptocurrencies work, where are they naturally going to go? They're going to go to Bitcoin and probably a handful of others as well that are finite in supply. In other words, if they're going to store value in these systems, they're not likely to store it in Facebook Libra. I can see why that would be useful for a medium of exchange. The user experience clearly is going to be pretty darn good. That's what Facebook's going to bring, is great user experience to cryptocurrency and educating the masses on cryptocurrency. It was Nick Spanos who pointed out to me, when they did that in Venezuela with the introduction of the petro, what ended up happening is people got smart about cryptocurrencies, and then they went to the cryptocurrency they thought was going to be retaining its value the best. And it wasn't the petro, it was Bitcoin.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly saw that. People were like, actually against it. It's like more government stuff. We're not going to trust the government after a fiat fail. And they went to Bitcoin, the more decentralized crypto on the market. Interesting. Now, one of the things you mentioned is that Facebook may run into some issues because of their maybe history with data privacy, but also KYC, AML. Can you talk a bit about that?
Well, this is interesting. A good friend of mine, Terry Kibbe, had a really good comment the other day that just hit me. And she said, conservatives fear big government, the liberals and progressives fear big business, and freedom-loving people fear when big business and big government collude. So with that concept, I would say this is really interesting because, Facebook's got a lot of crosswinds. They've got antitrust issues. The U.S. Senate Banking Committee sent a letter to them back in March asking why they were asking the banks for their customers' credit rating information. Excuse me. And, what were they going to do with that information? If you read the letter from the Senate Banking Committee, they were really concerned that Facebook was going to be starting a social credit score type system, and that was going to be used to discriminate against protected classes in the United States. So they don't clearly want to go towards a WeChat type system, a Chinese system with social credit scoring. But here's where I'm thinking this may go. This is something we all have to watch really closely. I think there could be a Faustian bargain cut because there are a lot of people in the governments who want to know every single transaction that ever happens in money, right? They don't want cash. They want no anonymous transactions, period. A perfect example of that is the person I quoted in the article on Forbes. Her name is Sigil Mandelker, I believe, and she's the undersecretary for financial intelligence and terrorism financing in the United States. And she spoke at the Consensus Conference last month and essentially said, she didn't directly say it, but she came pretty close to saying that they want to track every single financial transaction. And they expect that financial institutions will not just be filing the suspicious activity reports at $10,000, which is what the law says, but she said most terrorist financing transactions were $600, and we don't want to allow a single one of those through. So she's basically saying the new rules that are coming that, that the G20 is endorsing, every single financial transaction has to be trackable, and you have to send beneficial ownership information to the receiver, which of course you can't do with Bitcoin and Ethereum, and you're not going to be able to go back and redo those protocols. So you can kind of see that there's an interesting clash coming, where Facebook's Libra is they've said they're going to put their customers through rigorous identity and compliance programs, and so we already know now that that's going to create some interesting information flow that Facebook can be giving to governments, and in the U.S. in particular, where cryptocurrencies are considered capital assets for tax purposes, every single time you use Libra to buy a cup of coffee, you're triggering a capital gain or capital loss reporting obligation. And so Facebook is, if 1.6 billion WhatsApp users end up using Libra, presumably they're going to be making 1.6 billion tax filing reports to governments on behalf of the customers that are using it. So this is a gigantic data honeypot for governments who want to surveil their citizens, and Facebook may use that as a carrot to offset the pressures that it's under with respect to antitrust and data privacy issues. We'll see, but this is where I said grab the popcorn. Because the privacy issues are about to involve money. Up until now, they only involved information and identity and marketing related items. Now they're about to involve money. It's starting to get really interesting.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement with you. This is going to be really interesting, and it's going to be. I'm curious to how it's going to play out. And I know there's things, to your point of the taxes and the capital gains and all that. I know the bill that's in Congress right now, the Token Taxonomy Act, which would make the exemption, I think if it's up to 600, would benefit the entire crypto market as well as Facebook. I'm also,
and maybe now Facebook will help to support something like that.
I'm thinking they're probably going to lobby very heavily maybe for this. Wow.
Yep. I would assume so. And that's one of the benefits I pointed out when a sister company to the New York Stock Exchange called Bakkt announced that they were getting into Bitcoin. They're now on the side of users that don't want to have to deal with filing taxes on every single dollar of cryptocurrencies transacted. But that is the law of the land right now. And presumably Facebook's just going to do what banks do or what your employers do. And that is just send that information off to the US government. So you're not self-reporting your gains and losses on those things. They're going to be sending all that information to the government, and the government is then going to know not only who you are connected with, which is of course public information right now, but I presume your financial transactions are not going to be so public. And all of that is now going to be a data honeypot that's going to go to governments. It's going to be a surveillance dream for governments.
Oh boy. And on that note, because I know Facebook right now, they have a little bit of a reputation issue along with data breaches and privacy and so forth. I'm curious how much more information people will give to Facebook, given that it's a social network, it's not a bank, but that could change over time. But right now, like, I would not want to give Facebook my social security or whatever it is, right? Would some people don't even use their official name on Facebook? So what do you think how people will react to that? Eventually.
Well, I think it depends on different countries. So I think there was something really important in the information article, which was it had a lot of people speaking on background. I think it was probably a deliberate plant by Facebook because they're getting us all talking about it in advance of the big event, right? Which is what we're doing right now. Brilliant marketing strategy on Facebook's part. But in any event, I'm taking that article at face value, where somebody at Facebook said that they're really going to be marketing this in emerging markets. So if you think about, someone sitting in the United States or in, Paris or in Frankfurt or in Tokyo, right? They've got the monetary stability on their side because they're living in developed country financial markets, which are more stable for now. I think they won't be forever, but for now, they are more stable. Whereas someone living in Zimbabwe is very experienced with financial market volatility and may care less about their privacy, because to them, having something that's a little more stable to store their value is actually going to be much more valuable than giving up their financial privacy. So I think that we can't put a developed world lens on this in its entirety. This is, I take them at their word. This is going to be a developing world target market primarily. And to be honest, also, that's where their marketing is going to be more effective, because the citizens in the developing world are more used to foreign exchange volatility and understanding how to, convert their local prices into dollars. And so, even in the UK, you've got citizens used to that because they're constantly converting things into euros, right? They've got their own currency, but an enormous amount of trade and travel and interaction with Europeans on the continent. So folks in the UK are pretty comfortable with foreign exchange calculations. In the US, Americans are just not.
Yeah.
Not, we travel overseas, sure, but our oil prices and gasoline prices don't fluctuate with foreign exchange risk because they're priced in US dollars. Same thing with most commodities. They're priced in US dollars. So, here in the US, I think that is an additional marketing challenge for Libra to take off. And I wouldn't be shocked if this really doesn't take off in the developed world. And this is really mostly a developing world phenomenon, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's a great point. The people who, in those developing countries, it's a necessity, they need it, and I could see where they will move towards that. And also, I just came to mind, I could see Facebook maybe like with their partnerships. Let's say it's Uber. If you get incentives, maybe you get discounts, and I could almost people are like, oh, I could save money. I might be willing to do this. Give more information to Facebook.
Yeah, and the biggest incentive question that I raised is, will Facebook pay interest to users of Libra? And if it does, that would be a very big incentive for people to use it. And at that point, de facto, Facebook becomes a bank. Now, I asked that question rhetorically and specifically said I'm out on a limb in predicting that, because I suspect Facebook's not going to start by paying interest to its users. In fact, there was a equity research analyst at Barclays that predicted that Facebook could make $19 billion off Libra. It was a huge range. He said $3 billion to $19 billion, and Facebook, I think, makes something like $45 billion of profits, right? So $19 billion is a huge increase in profits if his high-end forecast comes to pass. And it's all a volume game, but here's the gist. The users are giving up the interest on their cash, and Facebook is going to be pocketing that. And as I pointed out in the Forbes article, some of that interest, some of it is risk-free interest that is corporate welfare to the banks. And Facebook's going to be dipping its hands into that till. And we should keep Facebook honest about where it's making those profits, because if it's basically becoming a bank and it's taking advantage of corporate welfare opportunities that are available through central banking relationships, and it's been out there working with a lot of big banks. We'll see how many of them ultimately come into this pool of 100. I suspect many of them will, because they want the foreign exchange transaction volume that's going to be coming out of it. So this is really, really interesting. But again, I think in the beginning, Facebook will probably not be paying interest. I think it's a hot potato if they're not. And that magnitude of profits going to Facebook from a corporate welfare program is going to cause a lot of folks to scream.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it also reminds me of currently in the crypto market, certain staking rewards that you can get in a sense of holding and getting an interest in that way. You can make that analogy. So it would be cool if they offer that. But to your point, if they don't and they're pocketing it, and also, like you said, getting the corporate welfare, so to speak, that's going to be a big problem.
Well, but here's one of the interesting things that any of the securities attorneys will tell you, that stable coins that pay interest probably are securities. There's a question whether stable coins that don't pay interest are securities, but there's a good argument that they're not, because they're not investment contracts under the Howey test in the U.S., which is a Supreme Court case that said investment contracts are securities. So the gist is, then if it's a security, then they can pay interest, but then you need a brokerage account to use it, which reveals the absurdity of U.S. securities laws. Or, you shouldn't need a brokerage account to buy a cup of coffee with Facebook Libra. Sure. Or alternatively, they could just hide behind it. And I think that, maybe they'll start out this way. They could just hide behind the fact that they can't pay interest because that would make it a security. In which case, the outcry from regular folks that we're going to be giving Facebook all this interest income and the just BS reason why they won't pay it to us is just going to reveal the absurdity of some of the financial regulations in the U.S. system. And by the way, it's not just the U.S. Europe and Asia are pretty much the same way. The banks are so highly regulated that Facebook is ultimately going to have to comply with a lot of those same regulations as well. And then basically, they become part of they become the new version of Wall Street circa 2008, where, they're even more unpopular than they are today. Right. Yeah. There's so many layers. To this. It's very interesting. This is not black and white. Yeah. Because I was talking to somebody else this morning, and he was saying, it's really, sometimes I hate this and sometimes I love this. And I said, we're all having that experience, the crypto folks. Right. One other interesting thing to point out, Nouriel Roubini, who's I'm one of the many crypto people he blocked early on. Yeah. He actually said something with which I agree, which is, this isn't a cryptocurrency. I think we all know it's not a real cryptocurrency. They're just calling it that. Yeah. But even that we get a benefit from, because they're mainstreaming the use of the word cryptocurrency. When I was in Wyoming with the Wyoming Blockchain Coalition, I was always pretty careful to avoid using that word, because I thought it actually had negative connotations, whereas blockchain had more of a mainstream acceptable connotation. Yeah. Now that Facebook's got a cryptocurrency, we can start using the word cryptocurrency, right? It's mainstreaming that word. So even the vernacular, Facebook has already, in my view, changed it. Absolutely. I'm in agreement with that. I think we start seeing people
stable coin is almost becoming a negative, having a negative connotation around it versus crypto. Because it seems everyone is trying to launch their stable coin, and then you have Facebook with its own stable coin. So the crypto community has already put up their walls like, no, we don't want this. But like to your point, it's good for the mainstream education and adoption and the growth of the market.
Yeah, well, and I think one of the other interesting things to watch is what's going to happen from a trading perspective. Will somebody actually put a Libra to Bitcoin trading pair up? Mm-hmm. And, will Facebook allow that? We will all have to know your customer to anti-money laundering, then, beneficial ownership information disclosed out the wazoo if that happens, because, again, Facebook made it clear that's what they're going to do. But I think that the crypto exchanges that post that trading pair are probably going to do pretty well.
Yeah.
If Facebook allows that. Yeah.
Right. That's a lot of folks have been debating that and curious if they will. And like you said, to your point, whoever gets the first mover on that will do well. Wow. Caitlin, a lot of insightful information, and I love your predictions. Everyone, I will put a link to Caitlin's article on Forbes, so be sure to check that out and read it in detail. And Caitlin, I know tomorrow, supposedly, Facebook will be releasing their white paper. So I would love to have you back on as we get more information and get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, sure. Let's take some time to percolate out. We'll see. I'm sure they've got a couple of surprises in their back pocket, but I think a lot of us are going to be reading about it tomorrow. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Caitlin, thank you once again. Appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.